Today we're going to talk about thinking of the next person. Now, there are many things that need to go right on a work site for a company to maintain a high level of safety and experience zero or at least a low number of injuries over a long period of time. One characteristic of a workforce that's very important to achieve low injury numbers is having employees who consider how their decisions affect others. When workers think about each other when preparing for a task or doing a task, everyone wins. An important rule of thumb when making a decision is to think of the next person. Now, when we say think of the next person, what do we really mean? Well, pre-planning is one of the most important things individuals can do at work to ensure safe and efficient operations. One aspect of pre-planning is thinking about the others who may be impacted by your decisions or the work that you're doing. When you make a choice to do something at work, you should not only consider what's easy or convenient for you, but it should also be taken into consideration as to how that choice may affect another person. Now, an easy way to discuss this idea is for us to consider some examples that happen every day in workplaces. For example, manual handling risks. So someone makes a delivery, a vendor's on site, and they're delivering boxes or delivering steel or whatever it is they're bringing to us. And a foreman makes a quick decision to have the boxes placed in a small area out of the way of the operation of that day. So as work goes on, more objects and more obstacles are placed around the boxes or the steel without really much thought. And then eventually the steel has to be brought back out, has to be retrieved. Now there's too many things in the way for a forklift or a piece of machinery to access the steel. But because of this, stuff has to be lifted out by hand and has to be carried to a spot where it can be accessed. So this puts a iron worker at unnecessary risk for a sprain or a strain injury, because the more stuff that you have to handle by hand, the higher the risk is that you're actually going to get injured. Property damage incidents, another example. So you're on a busy construction site, has hundreds of workers on it, and we've been experiencing a lot of property damage, stuff's getting hit. Well, also a safety manager who's reviewing these incidents notices that most of the items that are damaged are like tools and equipment that are being set down by laborers when they're not being used. And these items are not expected to be in these areas. And so heavy equipment operators don't see them and they end up running them over or striking them or whatever. So in review, in these examples, it's easy to see one thing that went wrong was lack of foresight and not thinking of the others who may be affected by certain decisions. In the manual handling examples, a lack of foresight by the supervisor put the laborers at great risk for injury by having to move the steel by hand. Manual handling created that problem. So this exposure to unnecessary risk for a sprain or a strain injury occurs very often. Even a simple decision to place a piece of steel in a certain area on the floor for the sake of ease can lead to an injury for the next person who has to bend over to pick it up. Similar incidents to the property damage example occur daily on construction sites. Carelessness, lack of forethought about the right places to put objects or park vehicles leads to property damage. In the example, the laborers didn't take the time to set the items in a place where operators could see them or would expect them to be. So if the laborers had given some thought to the operators' movements in that area, they probably could have, or at least should have, chosen a safer place to put the objects. So to summarize, great things happen when everybody begins to consider how their decision will affect others. Wisdom is thinking of the consequences, realizing that your own safety not only depends on your decisions, but choices made by every other person working around you. A choice as simple as placing a piece of steel in a particular place on dunnage may make the difference between whether somebody else can handle it easily or not easily, or run the risk of getting hurt in the process. So as you continue to work, try to think ahead and think of the consequences of what you're doing and think of the next person, and so preserve not only your own safety, but theirs.